is Dick Graham. I'm the director of the MAC, and we welcome you all to the MAC. If you haven't been here before, we're glad to see you come for the first time and hope you come back again. These forums that we're putting on, this one for the District 2 seat for Hamilton County School Board, these are, I think, very important for people to learn about the issues. We have a packet back at the back. If you didn't get one, you can pick one up or get one on the way out that has some of the school policies that impact some of the questions that will be asked tonight. So I think it's important to be informed about what the policies currently are. Then you can make a decision about the candidates' positions on the policies. These do take some time to put on. We do them as a community service. There's probably 100 volunteer hours that went into putting this one on. And we're going to be doing additional ones throughout the fall for other races after some of the primaries are over and we see who the candidates are, we'll be having some other debates like this. They do cost some money to put on, so if anybody wants to donate a little bit of money to help get these things off the ground, future ones, we have several ways to do it. Of course, cash is always good. We have a donation box out front. We have a place you can use your credit card, and we can take Venmo also. So any of that will work. You can also go to our website, signalmac.org, and sign up for our newsletter, and you'll be informed about any future forums that we're having or any other events here at the MAC. So without wasting any more of your time, I'll introduce our moderator, Greg Glover, and he'll take over from here. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Such a pleasure to be here. My name is Greg Glover from Local 3 News just down at the bottom of the mountain, and it's a beautiful day to be in Signal Mountain. How do I know that? Because the smoker is going at Pruitt's today, and that was the first stop on the way up. It was a delicious breakfast. Let me tell you a little bit about what's going on here. We accepted questions for the candidates from about 6 weeks ahead of the debate time to about 10 days prior. Got lots of those, and the board got together and kind of curated those so that we could have no questions being repeated and everything. Also, we solicited questions from you as you came in, and you have been great. We have been overwhelmed by your questions. Sadly, we won't have enough time to get to all of them. We'll pick 2 or 3. The board will while we're up here. But Snowda Hendricks has told me she will take each one of your questions submitted today, type it out, email it to the candidates, so they will, in the coming days, be able to see what it is that you are curious about and what you care about. As a matter of fact, Snowda Hendricks got all this together with the help from the board and made some packets that you'll find on a table in the back of the room there if you're interested in some of the policies that we talk about today, state, federal, and county, any of that. You can just pick one of those up on the way out and be more educated when you leave, because I know I learned a lot. Let's have a hand for Snowda real quick before we get started. She's hiding behind the curtain. So nice to see a crowd this size for a school board race in particular. Your interest is so appreciated, and your dedication to your civic responsibilities. So let me tell you your role here today. We want you to have rapt intelligence and also attention, and we want to keep any outbursts to a minimum, as in none. So no cheers, no jeers. You can cheer at the beginning and cheer at the end, and we'll all get along well. We're going to flip a coin to see who gives the opening statement first. The other candidate will get the first question and then deliver the closing statement first. Each candidate has 2 minutes for an opening statement, 1 minute for a closing statement, 2 minutes to answer a question, 1 minute for a rebuttal if there's one needed. I think I've gotten just about all of the announcements in. There was some question when we were taking questions in about why questions were accepted from everywhere across the district and not limited only to residents of this district. And the board has a statement about that, and I'll read it verbatim. Quote, "We, the MAC board, accepted questions from outside District 2 because we felt that each school board member's vote affects each of the 45,000 students in Hamilton County, and all students must be considered when making a vote." That's the reason that they decided to go that direction. So without further ado, let's get our candidates out here. What do you say? Crystal Bohm and Ben Darty. And Ms. Bohm, since you come up first in the alphabet, I'll let you say heads or tails on this coin flip here.
Okay, I'll take heads.
Heads is the call. And it is heads. So Ms. Bohm will deliver our opening remarks first. Mr. Daugherty will get the first question, and then at the end, you'll deliver the closing statements first. So if you'd like, your first 2 minutes, go right ahead.
Okay, thank you. Can you guys hear me? I feel like I have to get very close. So first I wanted to thank everybody at the MAC for putting on the event today, and specifically to Snowda. I know that she has spent a lot of time and effort working on this debate, and it shows from the 7,000 emails that Ben and I have received from Snowda with the agenda and directions. So thank you to all of you and all of you guys for coming here today. I'm Crystal Bohm. I'm running for school board in District 2. First and foremost, I'm a mom of 2 Hamilton County students. My children are 9 and 7. I'm also a wife. My husband is right here in the front. We've been married for 10 years. We've been up on the mountain for 11, I believe. I am also a graduate from public school. I grew up in Atlanta, Georgia, or in the suburbs of Atlanta, Georgia. I am a substitute teacher at Nolan. I've been subbing there for the last 4 years. That's where my children attend school. And I see one of my preschool teachers out here. I'm also a preschool teacher at Signal Crest. I am running as an independent in this race. This is the first time that District 2 has been a partisan election. I personally believe that our schools should not be political, our children are not political, and I do not think that political agendas belong in our schools. I think it's really important that every time we cast a vote and every time we write policy, we are keeping the 45,000 students in mind and not a political agenda. So again, thank you guys for being here, and I look forward to speaking to some of you after the debate.
Mr. Daugherty.
Thanks, Greg. For those who I have not had the pleasure to meet, my name is Ben Daugherty. I grew up not too far from here, just on Signal Mountain Boulevard, right behind the Presbyterian Church, where I grew up listening to Dr. Dudley preach. I'm joined today with my wife, Anna. We've been married for 10 years, about to be 11 in October. We've been blessed to have 4 really beautiful and healthy children. This is something I've been thinking about, praying about for over 6 years, and it actually took me trying to convince my wife 3 times to let me do it. And we are very intentional in the sense that we want and desire our kids to be part of the rich legacy of schools in District 2. And that's a huge reason why I've got a big vested interest in the success of these schools. I had a tremendous opportunity over the last year to participate in a strategic advisory council known as the Parental Advisory Board. This was a group of parents that represented each respective district in which we were able to provide strategic input that helped shape the county's 10-year plan, and that's called Opportunity 2030. This is the framework and playbook for the county that helps support our children, model our budget, and ensure that every kid is getting met with the attention that he needs. And it was through this experience that I really learned firsthand what makes a great school, and candidly areas in which I feel we can improve. I'm a businessman by trade, and that's something I want to take to this position. I feel like that's a skill set that will play a good positive part in ensuring that we are really optimizing our budget in a good way. Ultimately, it's about being a good steward and ensuring that we're doing the best we can for all kids across Hamilton County. So it's great to be here. I look forward to getting to know everybody throughout the rest of this evening. And huge thank you to Snowda and the rest of the board for putting this together. Greg for taking time to be in here. Looking forward to having a good conversation. These type of dialogues are so important. Ultimately, this is about choice and making the right choice for our children for the best future possible. Thank you.
And Mr. Daugherty, you get the first question. We start with social emotional learning, SEL. That is the process of developing the self-awareness, self-control, and interpersonal skills that are vital for schoolwork and life success. The question, what's your understanding of SEL, and what would you do to implement SEL-type policies if that's something you're in favor of?
Thanks, Greg. So we've seen some early success with the benefits of social emotional learning. For me, the best way to give an example of it is if you've got a child, many of us in this room do, and they have 2 quizzes that's due on, or 1 quiz on Wednesday, and they've got 2 reports due on Friday. Social emotional learning is really designed to help them understand how to prioritize time and resource allocation so that they can be better students, better equipped to manage the academic rigors of Hamilton County, and then in so doing, ensure that they're the best adults to be able to participate in society as possible. So we already have social emotional learning within our current curriculum. It was put under our current superintendent, Justin Robertson. So that's mandatory. There's no opt-out policy, and I'm pleased to see that we've got some early success coming out of that at this time.
Ms. Bohm.
So, yeah, I think social emotional learning is obviously very important. That's why we have seed coaches in our schools. Social emotional learning is really giving our children the skills to become adults. We have shown a lot of success, as Ben said, with SEL in schools. The study that I saw said there was an 11% increase in academic success when we included SEL in our curriculum. I know that SEL is being taught in our schools every day, and I think that it is very important. I think we need to be focusing more on things like that, teaching our kids self-awareness, self-confidence. Those are really important skills that they're going to take with them through life. So I definitely support the program and would love to see it continue.
Ms. Bohm, we'll stick with you. Hold your applause, please. Describe how you provide quality education for a diverse student population, gifted, talented, average, special ed, academically challenged, English as a second language, cultural, gender differences. How would you provide in your role, should you win this election, quality education for all?
So I think the biggest thing to focus on, again, is the 45,000 students that we have in Hamilton County. And I said this before, but I think it is the most important thing is that every time we cast a vote and every time we write policy, that we are making sure that we are keeping those 45,000 students in the front of our minds. I really love the community school model. I think that is a great way to focus on what we need in specific schools. As we know, Hamilton County is a very diverse county. We have students with many different needs. I think by having community schools, it allows that school to focus on the specific needs of their students and of their families. Our current funding model, which is called TISA, I think is excellent for this. We know that it costs more money to educate a child that has a disability, an IEP, what have you. And so the way the funding now works is for a typically learning child, they get X amount of money, and for a child that is going to require extra services, they get more money for that student. So that does allow us to offer more services for those children that need it. I think that's it.
Okay.
Thanks.
Mr. Daugherty.
Thanks, Greg. So there's a really popular tagline in Hamilton County, all means all. And that's something that's really near and dear to me. And as Crystal could attest to, the beauty and the challenge with public education is you've got to provide a free and accessible public education for all. And that's something that's beautiful in and of itself, but it's also challenging because every parent approaches education through an individualistic view, meaning that it's ultimately geared towards their child. So for me as a school board member, you've got to be attentive to the needs of others, and you've got to make sure that you're listening first and foremost. So for me, the best way we can really do this is ensure that the policy is crafted in such a way and the budget in such a way that supports both an individualistic view for all, while providing room for the individual style of each child so that you can provide a unique opportunity for each kid to thrive in their own respective interests. So it ultimately comes down to stewardship of the budget, because if the budget's in a strong, healthy place, we're going to have the ability to provide additional funding for new resources, new support training programs for our kids, so that every kid can be properly equipped in a position to succeed and be successful going forward to whatever their future looks like, whether it's career, whether it's college, whether it's vocational training. So I view that as we've got to be able to ensure that we're providing everything for all kids at all times, being attentive to what parents are looking for, and ensuring that the budget works in such a way to create and support that in a very meaningful, impactful style.
Mr. Daugherty, while you're there, the question specifically about your website. This one says, your website states, quote, schools exist to teach our children fundamental skills. It says that you initially specified reading, writing, mathematics, coupled with both state and national civics, as well as related arts classes, but that's since been removed, the specifics, then states, quote, anything beyond should remain the responsibility of the home. The question from this person is, can you define what is a fundamental skill and what should remain the responsibility of the home, and what do you see as can be eliminated in the schools?
Thanks, Craig. It's a great question, very specific question. For me, my focus is always going to be raising and maintaining the bar of excellence in our Hamilton County schools. And the unfortunate reality is that currently we have roughly a 39% TCAP proficiency. So when I look at that as a businessman with a strong business background, if you're running a business at a less than 50% optimal state, you're failing. So in my mind is anything that's outside of traditional academic rigor and focus is a distraction. We need to be preparing our kids to be able to read, to write at a proficient level so that they can be prepared for the next chapter of their lives. That is the duty of education, and that's what I'll always work to ensure that we're prioritizing that in Hamilton County to ensure that our kids are in a position to thrive, to be successful, and have the absolute brightest future possible.
Ms. Bohm, do you have any comment about anything that may be a skill that may be required or eliminated?
No, I definitely don't think anything should be eliminated. I think there's a question I think that's going to come up about arts in schools and whether or not we support it. So I'll answer that question then. But Ben, did you answer what you thought should be taken out of schools? I may have missed it.
Mr. Daugherty?
Yeah, no, thanks, Greg. So no, again, it's about focusing on what's important, and it's prioritizing the needs of our children to ensure that they are at the best stage possible of their lives. Again, we've got roughly a 39% TCAP proficiency rate. We've got kids that can't read and write. Those numbers are single digits when you look at our Hispanic population. We've got to ensure that our kids are able to be in a position to be successful and to thrive and to be the best versions of themselves.
Ms. Bohm, how do you measure success in education?
Honestly, I think this is such a tricky question. You know, I was looking at how Hamilton County specifically measures success, and it's things like attendance and TCAP scores and standardized tests and graduation rates, and of course, all of those things are important. What I think is probably even more important is making sure that our kids are actually ready to be productive adults, because not every child is going to go to college. We know that. We need to be able to support those kids where they're at. I wish there was a better way that we could actually look at the whole child, because somebody that has great attendance and has amazing test scores, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be successful in life. It's just not a good way to measure success, because we know that those kids might be missing out on some of the social emotional learning skills that we talked about. So I don't know how we measure that, to be honest with you. I know that Hamilton County does try to work with their social workers and teachers to determine the health of our kids, their family life, and things like that. I would like to see more of a focus on that and less of a focus on the standardized testing. I've talked to lots of parents who have said, I have a straight A student, they're kind, they're, great at problem solving, but they are terrible at taking tests. And so it's not always a great way of measuring success in our schools. So again, I would like to focus more on the whole child, and are they really ready to be a part of society? Because it's not just about attendance, standardized tests. There's a lot more than that to it.
Mr. Daugherty?
Thanks, Greg. So I'm a parent first and foremost, and I've been blessed to have 4 kids. And any parent that's raised a child knows that at the end of the day, all we're trying to do is help our kids find their spark, whatever that might be, whether it's sports, whether it's academics, whether it's robotics, and I think that's the duty that public education has, is we need to be facilitating environments that are conducive to that a kid, whatever his interest may be, he can find it and be passionate about it. So for me, that is how you measure success. Are we raising kids that are passionate about something, that are able to participate in the next stage of their life, whether it's college or some type of interest that they have? And I think we're doing a great job of that in Hamilton County, and if we continue to focus with the right leadership to create environments that support that, I think we're going to see a higher success rate. And I believe very strongly in Hamilton County, and I believe we have an opportunity to be the highest competing district in the state. We've got the right leadership, we've got incredible teachers, and I'm going to work to ensure that as a board member, we are raising and maintaining the bar of excellence across Hamilton County.
Something just crossed my attention there. I heard someone's phone ring, and it made me have a panic that I hadn't turned my ringer off. So now mine's off, and if you want to check yours too, go right ahead right now. I give you that permission by checking mine. Mr. Daugherty, someone took a deep dive into your website, apparently. It says you seem to reference return on investment over and over. The person asks, what does it mean, and how do you measure it?
Thanks, Greg. Another great question. So I'm a businessman by trade. That's what I do for a living, and a big part of that is I'm in contracts. So these are multi-year, multi-million-dollar budgets, and a big part of that is ensuring that you're optimizing in a very efficient manner. So the key position of a board member is to oversee Justin Robertson and ensure that the budget's operating in an efficient manner. And what we're talking about in Hamilton County is a $673 million budget of tax dollars. So this is precious resources that we've got to be good stewards of. So any good board member, whether you're on Amazon, Coca-Cola, or Walmart, you're going to provide a level of oversight when it comes to the running of that business to ensure that they're operating in an efficient manner, a responsible way, and that they're optimizing their existing resources. So for me, as a big piece of overseeing the budget, we've got to ensure that those dollars are being spent wisely and that ultimately they're helping impact the kids in a very positive way. And that's what a board member should do. We should be asking questions, hard questions. Hey, does that make sense? Hey, why do we choose to do that? Is that really working? And that's where you've got to have good feedback and good communication with parents, with staff, with teachers to ensure that there is a clear return on investment. We all have the same goal here. It's to get our kids in the best position possible. If we're going to continue to push money towards that, we've got to ensure we're doing as best we can. So for me, it's about being a good steward of our existing resources and ensuring there is a clear return on investment for the success of our children.
Ms. Bohm, do you have the same sort of philosophy for your way of approaching this job?
Yeah, of course. My background is in nonprofits, so we basically had to run programs on very little money, which sounds a lot like Hamilton County Schools. I, of course, think that we need to be good stewards of our money. I think our children are precious, and our tax dollars, I guess, are as well, but I'm mostly focused on our kids and making sure that they have everything that they need to be successful. And, of course, we need to make sure that we're putting our money in places that are going to work towards that goal. Which, of course, is important. At home, you're not going to keep pouring money into something that keeps breaking, right? And so obviously we need to be making sure we're doing the same thing with our schools. But ultimately, I think it's going to come down to making sure that we are putting more money into services for our children, because we are not a fully funded school, and we're not fully funded Hamilton County schools, and by that we're doing a disservice to our children. You're going to see in a lot of the questions here tonight are going to be about the budget. And it's going to be about how we don't have enough money for the services that we need to offer our children in order for them to be successful people when they leave our schools.
Ms. Bohm? Questioner says both candidates seem to be similar in the reasons you got into the race and the general things you want to do. Is there one thing that you can think of that sets you apart from your opponent, and how would that benefit the school system?
So Ben has mentioned several times tonight that he is very business focused and he is a businessman. I do not believe that our schools are businesses. And the reason I think that, thank you, is because a business can fail. And when a business fails, it closes. We do not have that option. Our schools cannot close. So we have to find a way to have enough money to provide services for our children. So again, it's not about, of course we need to optimize the budget, of course we need to be putting money into services for our kids, but this is not a business. Our schools are not a business, our children are not a business. The other thing that separates us is the fact that I'm running as an independent. Again, I don't think school boards should be political. Our children are not political. Every time we vote, every time we write policy, it is about our children and not about a political party's agenda.
Mr. Daugherty. Same question.
Same question. Thanks, Greg. Yeah, I am a businessman. That is my background. And I guess I would disagree in Crystal in that respect, because ultimately this is about organizational excellence. And we've got to have people that are on the board that are trying to strive to a better, higher level. And again, my goal with our kids is to compete at the highest level. So whether that's a kid in District 2, 11, 6, 9, whatever, we want to make sure that we're creating environments that are conducive to achieving that. So business is a huge piece to it, and the way you approach it from a board perspective is vital to the success of that. Justin Robertson's a friend, and he's a very smart guy. He's doing a great job, but in the day, he doesn't know everything. Nobody does. Our job as a board member is to facilitate conversations that enable the productive goal of ensuring that our kids are in the best state possible. The other thing that I would lean on heavily too is Tennessee's unique in that the school board has no power over raising or lowering taxes. So we have to work very closely with our county commissioners to ensure that we're achieving the results that are desired. And those results are getting the kids in the best optimal state. So I'm very proud of the partnership I have with Chip Baker today, and I look forward to continue working with him and other commissioners in prioritizing District 2 and Signal Mountain across Hamilton County.
Mr. Daugherty, could you be specific about how you would support teachers? We've talked about supporting the students, supporting the schools. How would you enable the support of teachers?
Yeah, I mean, that's a fantastic question. As I've said on my website, as I believe someone pointed out on one of the questions, teachers are the heart and soul of our schools. So for me as a parent that's got 2 kids in Thrasher today, we are so blessed and fortunate to have really exceptional teachers. The hard reality is we have currently in Hamilton County teachers that are being faced with a very difficult decision, whether or not they want to continue to pursue doing what they love or find another job that pays the bills. And that's the hard reality of it is. So it's fundamentally important that we prioritize competitive teacher salaries. That has to be a cornerstone in our budget every single year that we build off of. Anything that gets in the way of that is secondary and needs to be reconsidered or renegotiated. But the other thing, too, that I think is vitally important that I've learned over the course of this campaign in talking with teachers is that they want to feel heard. They want to feel like they're understood, and they want to feel like they're supported. So as a board member, it's our job to be a presence in those schools to ensure that we're being a conduit for their needs and conveying them to Justin Robertson so that their needs are being heard. So you've got to be a presence both physically and emotionally to ensure that these teachers who are on the front lines, who are impacting our kids' lives in a very positive way, are being best supported. And as a school board member, I will always prioritize our teachers in terms of listening and ensuring that they're getting what they need so they can do the job that is so important in helping shape our kids' futures.
Ms. Bohm, how would you support teachers should you get this role?
I think the best way to support our teachers is to listen to them. I think it is to ask them what they need to feel supported. We are going to talk a lot tonight probably about teacher salaries, and obviously that is a very big item that we need to be focusing on because we definitely need to be paying our teachers more money. But I think when you look at it, so my background, again, is in nonprofits. Now, when I decided to work for nonprofits, I knew I was not going to get rich. I knew that I was choosing a career where I was not going to make a lot of money, but I did it because I had a passion for helping people. And I think that our teachers do the same thing. Again, like, you can look up salaries online. It's public information. They were not surprised when they were hired. So I do think we need to pay our teachers more money, and that will obviously help. They need to make a living wage. But I think the biggest thing is making sure that we are supporting teachers where they need support. I have talked to a lot of teachers that chose not to come back this year, and it wasn't because of the money. It was because they didn't feel safe and supported by their admin or by their parents and their communities. I know they've talked about professional development and how they don't really have a great choice in that. They're taken away from their classrooms to do something that isn't really relevant to them, and we need to make sure that we are asking our teachers for their advice and what they need to feel supported.
Ms. Bohm, we'll stick with you. Your goals and plans to address inequality in the schools in the district, and that could be because of parental resources are lacking or economic situations. What are your plans to address inequality in schools in the district?
So I actually sent a text to Kathy Lennon earlier today, who is a former school board member that's here, and I said, Kathy, I think I realized that all we really need to do is have community schools in order to be successful in Hamilton County. We currently have 18 community-forward schools in Hamilton County, and I think that they are fantastic. In District 2, we have one community school, which is Red Bank Elementary. What is great about a community school is that you are partnered with somebody. So for Red Bank Elementary, they're partnered with Northside Neighborhood House. So Northside Neighborhood House actually pays to have a community coordinator in the school. They're there every day, and their whole job is to bring services and supports to our students and to their families. And again, because this is such a diverse county, that's just a really great way to make sure that the students and the families that are in that particular school are getting the services that they need. And I think it would help a lot with the inequality to have these partnerships. We're really lucky in Chattanooga. I can't remember what the numbers or statistics are, but when I moved here from Atlanta, I was shocked by the number of nonprofits that we have in this small city. which just tells me that we have a community that really wants to help. And I think most people would agree that public education is really important. So I think it is a matter of having somebody who their sole job is to focus on how we can get services and support into our schools and for our students and for their families as well.
Mr. Daugherty, how would you address inequality in schools in the district?
Yeah, thanks, Greg. As Crystal, I know will agree with me, we are extremely blessed and fortunate to have really exceptional schools up here. And a huge reason to that is we have an incredible amount of parental engagement in our schools. We've got parents that are focused, that are supportive, and that are fundamentally trying to help their kids be the best versions of themselves. The sad reality is that not every district across Hamilton County experiences that same benefit or opportunity. So when I was on the parental advisory board last year, one key thing that we really talked about is a program called wraparound support. So the idea behind this is to engage with strategic community partners to support the community and parents to help them become the best versions of themselves, a stronger family. Because at the end of the day, if the child is going to a place at the end of the day at his home that's not as conducive to success as it is, you've got a challenge with that, and it puts a greater burden on the teachers to get that kid caught back up. So what I would love to see, and what I know we are seeing, is a continued focus on those strategic partners. This is a low-cost opportunity to engage nonprofits, to help support families across the community in a very meaningful way. So I'd like to see that number continue to increase. And again, this is about wraparound support. So it's the idea is looking at the total child and providing truly beneficial opportunities that are strategic to support the family so that the family's stronger. I believe that stronger families will contribute to stronger communities, which in turn will turn into stronger schools.
We'll leave that category now and move
Greg.
on to teachers and staff.
Great, can I say
Oh,
something
certainly.
about
Yes,
that?
go right
Sorry.
ahead. Go
No,
ahead.
it's okay. I obviously think it is very important to have a strong family, but the reality is that a lot of kids in Hamilton County don't have that option. They either aren't being raised by parents at all, they're being raised by an aunt or by a grandmother. And so I think it is really important that, yes, it would be great if we all came from a home where we had strong families, but that isn't the reality. And there is a statistic that says that the number one predictor of a success of a child in school is to have one adult that shows an interest in their education. And so I think it's important that we make sure that we are having those adults, whether it be a counselor, a social worker, a teacher, the community coordinator, somebody in our schools needs to be showing interest in these children and in their education, because unfortunately, a lot of our kids are not getting that support from home.
We'll move to teachers and staff now. Two types of the people that we're talking about: certified staff that are teachers, school counselors, school psychologists, school central office-based employees, and classified staff. That's employees who are support staff regardless of education and training. And the question, I believe, Mr. Daugherty, we're with you, aren't we? What degree of input should certified staff have on their working conditions? What about classified staff? So each one of those two particular divisions there.
Yeah, thanks, Greg. So anybody that's in a building that's helping support and contribute to the success of our kids deserves to have input. So whether it's a janitor or a cafeteria worker or a teacher, everybody's input's valuable because they all look at it from a different perspective. So as a board member, it's our job to help facilitate those type of conversations to ensure that the best ideas are being elevated to the top so that we can make an impact on our kids' futures. So it doesn't matter who you are. If you've got good ideas that are going to help our kids be better versions of themselves, we need to listen and we need to support it.
Ms. Moe?
Greg, can you repeat the question?
Absolutely. It was a little convoluted. I apologize.
Oh, wait, no, I
Certified
remember. Certified and
staff.
classified staff. I got it.
Yes,
I'm back.
yes.
I'm back. Okay.
It's a little warm in here. It's no
We
problem.
call that mom brain, Greg. Okay. So, I mean, exactly like Ben said. Honestly, when I read this question, I was like, I would really love to know what was behind this question, because of course these people should have input on their working environment. I think any teacher would tell you that their classified staff enables them to do their job. And classified staff, those are the people that we're losing. Those are the people that, I know there was a reading interventionist that we had at Nolan who I had subbed for once, and I ran into her at Walmart, and I was asking her a question about my son, and she had left the school, and I said, you know, what are your plans now? And she said, well, I'll probably come back and sub because I would make more money as a sub than I did as a reading interventionist. Yeah, let that sink in for a minute, because I'll tell you, I am a sub, and I think I make $62 a day after taxes with a bachelor's degree. So it's pretty sad that she could make more money as a sub. So these classified employees are so important in our schools for the services that they bring to our children, to the pressure and stress they take off of our teachers. And so, yes, our classified and certified staff should have tons of input on their environment.
There's a question here about teacher retention. They say teachers are pivotal and part of the children's growth and development. If our kids don't have consistency because of turnover rates, it could truly be detrimental to the way that they learn, their ability to trust teachers, and make for overall unhappiness when learning. In Tennessee, about 8 in 10 teachers report they will continue to teach in their schools next year, but that means approximately 20% do not plan to continue to teach. Ms. Bohm, do you have a plan to retain the teaching staff?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, we've talked about salaries, but I've also talked about the importance of our teachers feeling supported and heard. Again, I've talked to several teachers who left Nolan this year, and when I asked them why, it wasn't because of the students, it wasn't because of, they no longer felt passionate about public education. It was because they didn't feel supported and safe by their own administration and in their schools. So to me, it is so important to listen to our teachers. If we would listen to them, they will tell us what they need. They would be more than happy to tell us that. I hear this all the time when I sub. They say, oh, this was really great. I got asked to be a part of this committee, but I have to be downtown at 4 o'clock. She's an elementary school teacher up here who has children. She said, I can't even get there in time from my job, so I have to try to find a sub for the end of the day so I can go to this committee that I was asked to be on, where I also don't get paid. So, when you think about things like that, she's like, yes, it was an honor for me to be asked, and I'm so glad that somebody wanted to listen to me. However, they're making it so difficult for us to even be a part of these conversations. So one of the things I talk about in my platform is having an advisory board. I want to talk to parents and teachers and community members and really listen to them and find out what the issues are that they see in our schools and how we can better support them. So of course that includes our teachers, because without teachers, we do not have schools.
Mr. Daugherty, do you have a plan to retain teaching staff?
Yeah, retention is vital. In an organization, when you have a hiring and firing, what you typically see, as a rough estimate, is it's 150% more expensive to replace an individual than to retain. So when you talk about financial stewardship, that's a key piece to it as well. So at the end of the day, it's about supporting teachers so they don't want to leave in the first place. As I've mentioned, we've got to prioritize competitive teacher salaries. That's got to be a cornerstone in our budget. But the other thing, too, that I've learned from speaking with many teachers throughout the season is that they want to feel heard and they want to feel supported. So everybody in here has held a job, probably is currently employed. You can have a great job that you're passionate about, but if you've got a bad boss, it can really sour that situation in a very negative way. So as a principal, it's their job to ensure that they're creating a conducive environment for these teachers to feel supported, to feel heard, so that they can focus on what they truly love doing, and that's teaching our children. So for me, one thing I would love to see was more opportunities for our teachers to provide honest feedback and some type of assessment where they can actually give honest, unbiased, with no fear of accusations, feedback around their principals and how they are being supported within those schools.
Now we move on to instructional materials and books. And as I mentioned, policies there in the back, if you'd like to read the entire policy for role of school librarian to curate the quality, diverse, inclusive, and relevant resources that support school mission, curriculum, learners' interests. There's a list of duties of librarians in the school system. Among them, empower independent learners to make meaning for themselves through instruction in collecting, organizing, and sharing information. The question here, Mr. Daugherty, do you think teachers and librarians are qualified to choose appropriate topics and teaching materials, including books for the students, with the assumption parents have the option for their own children to have alternative options for materials they may find personally objectionable?
Yeah, thanks, Greg. So the question really answers itself, and this is one where I'd love to better understand the intent behind it. So teachers and librarians are professionals, and we should trust them to do the job that they have set out to do. Currently, with the policy in parentheses that parents have the ability to provide certain level of oversight and overview, I wholly support that. So in my mind, this question really answers itself with the current process we have in place.
Ms. Bohm? Teachers and librarians, are they qualified to choose the appropriate topics, assuming that parents have the ability to opt out?
Yes, absolutely. Our librarians all have to have a master's degree, so they are very much qualified, as do many of our teachers. They're very qualified. When I had talked to the librarian at Nolan, she told me that obviously she is there for multiple reasons, but one of them is to instill a love of reading in our children. And she said a lot of the books that she acquires into the library are books that were actually requested by students on topics that they were interested in, and I think that that's really important to remember that, you know, I know for me, if my son wants to read any book, I don't really care what it is. I want him to love to learn to read. And so if we're listening to our kids and they're showing interest in a particular topic or a particular book, I think it is amazing that our librarians are then able to provide that reading material for our children. And like it was stated, parents obviously have some level of right here to say, I don't want my child reading this book, or this is not appropriate, or whatever that is. And again, when I had spoken to our librarian, she told me that she's had parents do that, and she's always happy to accommodate them.
Along that same line, all elementary schools in Hamilton County send an email to the home address on file of books that student checks out. Middle school and high school parents, guardians may opt in for this service. Is that policy sufficient? Should there be more?
No, I think that's very sufficient. I remember when my son started kindergarten, this is just a funny story. He didn't know that we got these emails, and so he would come home, and I would know that he'd like checked out a book on, I don't know, frogs or whatever. And I'd be like, hey, buddy, I know you went to the library today and got a book on frogs. And it would freak him out because he had no clue how I knew that. And I always tell him, you know, moms have eyes everywhere. So it really scared him for a long time. But no, I think it's great. I think that it is very sufficient. That way you see that your child not only went to the library that day so you can ask them about their day, but also it gives you the title and the author of the book that they checked out. So then you have the opportunity to either say, I would like to see that book and read it before them, or whatever it is. And I think the fact that in our secondary education they have the option to opt into that policy as well, I think is amazing, because that way, you know, I know there's some concern as our children get older of what they're reading, and so it does give parents the information that they need to, you know, to make a decision as parents of whether or not it's appropriate for their specific child.
Mr. Darden, is it appropriate? Is it sufficient?
Same question?
The policy, yes.
Yeah, I think it's a solid policy. I think it creates transparency between the home and the school, and that's the ultimate goal in terms of education, is working with parents to ensure that their kids are being supported in the best way possible. So I think it's a good policy. I think it creates transparency, which is vital.
In the Hamilton County Board of Education policy book, there's a section on selection of instructional materials other than textbooks. The board will seek to provide a wide range of instructional materials on varying levels of difficulty with diversity of appeal and presentation of different points of view. The question associated with this policy for the school board, Mr. Daugherty, how would you respond to a parent who would want the district to limit access to or remove books from a library or from a classroom?
Thanks, Greg. So we currently have a state-mandated process in place in which a parent who has a child in Hamilton County can make the request to challenge a book. So I, as a school board member, I would encourage that parent to follow the process.
Ms. Bowen?
Yes. Was the question about taking books out altogether, or just if a particular parent had a problem with a particular book?
How would you respond to a parent who wants the district to limit access to or remove books from the school library or classroom?
Gotcha. Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, I would encourage them to go fill out the form. They have to read the book from cover to cover, and then it goes to a committee. They make the decision, and if they're not happy with that decision, then it would go to the board. I do think on an individual basis, it is every parent's right to have that option to have a book removed. I do think as a whole that you cannot take away the freedoms of other people's children and the books that they want to read, but on an individual basis, I think that every parent has the right to do that.
Moving on to special education now. Many children in the school system struggle with physical, mental, emotional disabilities, that their needs are not being met in regard to the one-on-one attention they need. Exceptional education is very understaffed, often ignored. Teachers are given too many students to meet the child's needs. It seems as though many kids have needs that just aren't being met. Many of these parents are pulling kids and sending them to private schools So the question, Ms. Boehm, how do you plan to ensure that every school in your district is handicapped accessible and inclusive?
So we have a federal law that says that our schools have to be ADA compliant. So to me, I don't think it even needs to be a conversation, it just needs to happen. We have a law telling us that we are responsible for making sure that all of our schools are ADA compliant. So to me, that's a no-brainer. We need to make sure that happens. Every student needs to be able to have access to every part of their school and every part of their playground. As far as making sure everything is inclusive, again, every time, Ben went over this, the role of the school board is to write policy, to be the boss, basically, of Dr. Robertson, and to write the budget. We do not get to approve the budget. But again, in everything that we do, every vote that we cast, every policy that we write, and every time we write the budget, we need to be keeping these kids in mind. They need to be a topic of conversation. 14% of our Hamilton County students have a disability. That is a pretty big number. So we need to make sure that every time we like I said, write policy, cast a vote, that we are keeping all 45,000 of our students in mind. That includes our 14% of our population that has a disability, and make sure that when we're writing this policy or casting a vote, we say, is this appropriate for every student in our school? Are we doing the best that we can for each of these kids?
And Mr. Daugherty, how do you plan to ensure every student in the district, every school in the district rather, is handicapped accessible and inclusive?
So, I mean, this is ultimately around a free and accessible public education. So this is federal law that's in the Individual Disabilities with Education Act of 1975 and Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973. So these are federal laws. So as a school board member, it's my job to ensure that every single school is following that letter to the law to the letter, and providing that what those kids need. So absolutely, we've got to support it. We've got to make sure the laws are being supported and enacted in our community schools.
This may be along the same lines, but Mr. Daugherty, should there be budget cuts? How would you ensure, or how would you ensure that the budget cuts don't come at the expense of the students with disabilities?
Yeah, so again, these are individuals with the most need, and we've got to ensure that the federal laws and the state funding and the federal funding that's allocated to supporting these kids is being held to that letter of the law. Again, it's federal laws, so as a school board member, it's our job to ensure that they're being supported. The other piece is these individuals, these children with these special needs, they have an IEP team. So they've got a team that's really, in theory, being a proponent for them and a champion. And it's the job of the superintendent to ensure that he's listening to that team to provide the best accessibility for these kids possible. In my mind, it always goes back to good financial stewardship. So if we're not doing that in a responsible way, that's when you have difficult conversations about cuts. Cuts don't happen overnight. It's a series of events or decisions that leads into it. So as a school board member, it's my job, going back to a return on investment, that we are managing our resources in a financially responsible way. It's all about good stewardship. And if we're doing that, we won't have to have those hard conversations when it comes to teacher salaries or supporting our kids who require the most need.
Ms. Boehm, would you pledge to keep budget cuts away from special needs programs and students?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like I've talked a lot here tonight about how we don't need less money, we need more money, so I would not be cutting the budget, especially where it concerns our children with disabilities. Our IEPs are a legally binding contract, so if we are not meeting children's IEPs, Hamilton County Department of Education can actually be sued. So we definitely don't need to be cutting budget around these children, or really around any of the services that go to our children. I think if we did have to make budget cuts, we would have to see what's going to impact our children the least amount, and certainly taking money away from the 14% of our Hamilton County school population doesn't make any sense. So no, I would never cut money from our children with disabilities.
How about staff? Staffing shortages, professionals, reading specialists, therapists, associate education teachers. How can you, if you attain this role as a school board member, keep those from affecting children with special needs?
Again, I would never cut the money that goes to these people. We talked about how important our classified employees are around our students and around our children. Again, IEPs are a legally binding contract. So if we get out of compliance, we can be sued. So we need to make sure, talk about being good stewards of our money, we definitely don't want to get sued. So it's much more important that we make sure that our children have the services and support that they need from our counselors, social workers, anybody who works with 504s and IEPs need to be top priority in our schools.
And Mr. Daugherty, is there a way a school board member can protect the staffing especially for special needs programs and students?
Yeah, I mean, it all goes back to financial stewardship. If there's not a shortfall within the budget, you're going to be able to do every single thing that you need to do. The other thing, too, is the ratio. So when you look at the ratio of support staff and teachers that are actually supporting these kids with special needs, you've got to make sure that that ratio is in line. So you've got to have strict oversight to ensure that the principals are adhering to that the IEP teams are adhering to that, so that these kids that require the most need are getting the support they need. So it all goes back to the budget. You've got to have a pure heart for the intentions of the kids and the support staff that's helping them. And you've got to ensure that we're able to financially support them so that they can do the jobs that they love, and that's supporting these kids that have some of our greatest needs in our community.
Let's move on to Title IX. The U.S. Department of Education has released final Title IX regulations. They say they're providing protections against sex discrimination. A copy of the guidelines was sent to each candidate. Federal courts have suspended the law in 10 states, including Tennessee. Mr. Daugherty, first question. Under the new Title IX, how do you think new Title IX regulations will affect eligibility for sports and the daily lives of students? Should the redefined regulations ultimately go into effect, and how do you feel about these new regulations?
Yeah, well, so I fully support our state's attorney general in ensuring that the 50-year protection that is protected in Title IX is being withheld. So there was an injunction that was granted in district court in eastern Kentucky that would halt that new Title IX ruling, and I was very pleased to see that. As a father to 4 kids, 2 of which are girls, one is a really good athlete, the idea of allowing boys to compete in girls' sports is a safety issue, and it's a massive disservice to girls who want to compete and try to thrive and do something that they love and are passionate about. So my job as a school board member, as a parent, will be to always ensure that our daughters and our girls in Hamilton County are being protected first and foremost. So I support our Attorney General fighting against that, and I was pleased to see the injunction that took place in Eastern District Court of Kentucky.
Ms. Bohm? First, how do you feel about the new Title IX regulations? And secondly, how would it affect daily lives of students?
Wow. Yes, what? Oh.
Question is, how do you feel about the new Title IX regulations, and how do you feel if they were put into effect, how they would affect daily lives of students and sports?
Yeah, so as far as I know, it is going to affect on August 1st of 2024, and Title IX basically says that we have to make sure that our sex-separate sports stay that way. But what it also did that I'm really excited to see was that it expanded the sexual discrimination to include our gender identity, to include gender identity and to also include our sexual orientation. So that is just an extra layer of protection for our children in our schools that identify in that community.
Continue with this line of questioning, Ms. Bohm. This question from a person who says, both of you state school safety is a priority for you if you become the school board representative. As a parent of a transgender child who's been bullied by fellow students and one who knows many families who have LGBTQI plus children who have also been bullied, I have a great concern for the safety and well-being of non-binary students. The question is, do you share this concern? And if so, would you commit to work to promote a more accepting and safer environment for all 45,000 students?
Yeah, absolutely. These are somebody's children. Okay, so think about that. It could be your child one day. We want to make sure that all of our children are safe in our schools. That includes everybody's children. So it certainly includes this parent's child as well. We have zero tolerance for bullying in our schools. So this to me is a bullying issue. So whether a child is being bullied because of their gender identity or because of the kind of shoes that they wear, we do not tolerate bullying in our schools. So we need to make sure that this policy is being enforced, because I know in many instances it has not been enforced. So it would be our job on the school board to shed light on these issues and have a call to action to make sure that the policy that is already written is actually being enforced in our schools to protect all 45,000 of our kids. And that, of course, includes our trans and gay students as well.
Mr. Daugherty, do you share the concern, and would you work to promote a more accepting environment?
As a parent, I have a concern for any type of bullying. Raising 4 kids, I know that's a challenge. And whether it's you're not wearing the right type of shoes or you're not in the right club, I mean, every kid at the heart of them, they want to find a community. They want to find a group of friends that they feel accepted in and supported in. And that's a huge piece of childhood development. Our schools, where our kids spend a majority of their time in there today, should be environments that foster and cultivate that. So I'm fundamentally opposed to any type of bullying. And I think we as a board need to lean in on this and ensure that we have stricter adherence to the current policy to not tolerate it, period.
Moving to budgets and salaries now. Student safety and teacher salaries are traditionally 2 of the major concerns we hear about in public schools. The question, Mr. Daugherty, how will you address student safety and teacher salaries if you are elected to serve on the board?
So I'm really pleased to have the endorsement of our County Sheriff, Austin Garrett, and I'm very pleased that the current board and the administration has put in place policies that provide an SRO or an SSO at every single one of our Hamilton County schools, including charter schools. So that's fundamental. Our kids need to feel safe, and parents need to have peace of mind when it comes to dropping their kids off in the morning. So we need to continue to ensure that we have the right staff in place within our SROs and our SSOs, properly staffed, to provide that level of protection that our kids need. And the other piece around budget is we've got to prioritize teacher salaries. I've said it once, I'll say it again, I know I sound like a broken record, but these are the individuals that are on the front lines. They are doing the work and supporting our kids and helping them be the best versions of themselves. If we really believe that, we've got to prioritize that in the budget every single year. This needs to be a cornerstone in the budget. We've got to work around it. You cannot make excuses for it, and we don't need to be talking about at the end of a budget conversation. It's got to be prioritized, and as your school board member, I will always work to ensure that that's being prioritized, to ensure that we have the best, most competitive teachers working for our kids and helping them be the best versions of themselves.
Mr. Daugherty, before you sit down, let me add the second part of this question, and we'll give both questions to you too. Specifically, you mentioned teacher salaries as being a top priority. What are some of your other priorities when it comes to school budget and money being spent?
Around the budget?
Yes.
Yeah, so one thing I would love to see is a continued investment in wraparound support, as I've mentioned. So when you talk about family and the support of the structure that's within those homes, it all goes back to helping foster and create strong families. And that often is the challenge that we have in place in Hamilton County, that not every district has the benefit we do up on Signal Mountain with very strong, engaged parents. We allocated about $1 million for community and family engagement in this past year budget. I'd like to see that number increase. We need to continue focusing on strengthening families, ensuring that they are supported so that they can support their kids in turn, and helping them continue to thrive and grow.
Ms. Bohm, how do you address first student safety and teacher salaries, and then we'll ask about your priorities after that?
Okay. I'm super grateful to have SROs and SSOs in our schools. My son said today, he said, well, I mean, we have Officer Lockhart, and I feel very safe with him. So I said, well, that's fantastic. And I feel safer as a parent when I go there, and I do see him walking around. This is something we didn't deal with when we were children. I don't think my parents ever put me on the bus and thought, you know, what if there was a mass shooting at our school today? That just wasn't the reality of us growing up. So doing everything that we can to make sure our children are safe is definitely top priority. One of the things I would like to see is, as a substitute teacher, we have no emergency training whatsoever. We have hundreds of subs that go into Hamilton County schools every single day, and I didn't realize it until I was subbing and there was a fire drill, and I thought, I don't know where the emergency folder is. I don't know what door we go out. I don't even know all these kids' names yet because it was right when we got there in the morning. So that is something that we need to be making sure we are providing our subs with the adequate training that they need to make sure our kids stay safe. We also need to make sure that we are focusing on policy that we already have, making sure we sign in at the front office when we are a visitor, making sure that our doors are not propped open because somebody's going to run back in the building. I see these things happen all of the time, and it could be something that simple that is makes the difference between our child being safe and not being safe.
And as far as the budget goes, what would your priorities be?
One of my top priorities would be our facilities. We have over $1 billion in deferred maintenance in Hamilton County right now. That means that we have kids in schools that don't have heat. And I would like for you to imagine going to your office in the middle of winter where there's no heat. They would probably send you home. They'd probably say, we don't have heat today, go work from home. We don't have that option for our children. And I think that it is terrible that we expect our children to go into facilities that don't even have heat and have lots of other issues. How can you learn in an environment where you are not comfortable, where you do not feel safe? So to me, that is top priority, is making sure that we look at the maintenance that we have to take care of in Hamilton County. And then, of course, teacher salaries need to be on there. I feel like we've talked about that a bunch today, so I wanted to shed light on the fact that we have $1 billion in deferred maintenance in Hamilton County.
And talk about the financial needs of the school district. Should there be an unexpected need or something that the budget does not fund, do you promote or would you approve of a tax hike, or would there be other resources for funding that you would seek?
So Ben mentioned this earlier, and unfortunately, we have absolutely no power to raise taxes. We cannot even really approve our own budget. So that comes down to county commissioners, and I encourage everybody to go to the county commission meeting this Wednesday morning at 9:30 because they hold the purse strings. And so we need to be putting some pressure on county commission to fully fund our schools and to make sure that we have this money available to us. I would love to see our board be fiscally independent. I think that schools that have this ability are way stronger than our schools are because as school board members, we are the ones in our schools and having conversations with people. We are the ones who see the needs in our school, and the fact that we cannot approve our own budget to make sure that we have the services and the resources that we need for our students is terrible. As you probably know, the board just voted again on the budget. They approved a budget, went to county commission. They said, no, we'll give you less money. And the board came back and said, no, we're going to approve our original budget. And I applaud them for doing that because they are taking a stand and saying that this is what is most important, and we will stand by our teachers until they get the raise that they deserve.
Mr. Daugherty, would you approve of a tax hike, or would you find, or are there other sources of revenue?
Yeah, so the school board has no purview over raising or lowering taxes. That's a county commission decision. I'm pleased to have our current county commissioner, Chip Baker's support and endorsement, and I look forward to working closely with him as your next school board member to ensuring that we are prioritizing District 2 and the schools and families and children that are in our schools. It's all goes around to in terms of working with the right people and the right parties. And this position is about communicating and ensuring that we are maintaining strong levels of communication. We've got to be strong proponents for our children in our schools, and it starts at the school board, ensuring that those needs are being addressed to the county commission. So I look forward to working with our county commission and ensuring that we are prioritizing District 2.
We have a whole page of questions left, and we're running short on time here. I'm going to pick a couple of the last ones here and ask if we have any that were submitted that we want to try to sneak in at the end. While Snowda brings those up, Mr. Daugherty, I'll ask you, in the last candidate forum, you both expressed support for Superintendent Dr. Robinson's decision not to allow armed teachers in the school system. Will you pledge to oppose efforts by school board members to override that decision?
Oh, sorry, Greg. Yeah, so I do not believe we need the policy in Hamilton County. As mentioned, we've got fully staffed SROs and SSOs at every single one of our schools and charter schools. I support Justin Robertson's position on that, and I will stand behind that going forward into the future.
Ms. Bohm, would you pledge your support for the superintendent?
100%. I would never, ever, ever want to have our teachers armed in our schools. We already ask so much of our teachers. I do not think asking them to protect our children with guns should be something that we should be asking them to do as well.
Before we start rounding up here, I want to let you know that both of our candidates will be in the lobby if you'd like to go and shake hands and let them kiss your baby if you brought your baby to be kissed today, as they are on the campaign trail. I think we had voter registration before we started. I don't know if she's going to be there or not. But you know where to do that if you have to do that. Right, yeah, we'll move on with that. Some questions from the audience tonight. These, if you didn't know, we submitted the questions to our candidates so they could get a feel for what we're going to be discussing tonight. But these are hot off the presses, so they haven't seen them yet. Let's see. Ms. Bohm, what do you plan to do to address and end fighting in schools?
Close school. No, I'm just kidding. We talked about earlier how we have policy that is written around fighting in schools and bullying in schools, and I think it really comes down to the fact that ultimately our principals can come in at the end of that and make the final decision. And I think sometimes that is good because they're in the schools, they know the students, they know these families. However, I think a lot of times it is keeping our policies from being enforced. I met with some people who are actually here today to talk about one of these issues, and it seems to be the same group of people that are constantly getting into these fights. It has been videoed, we know it's happening, and nothing is being done. So to me, we need to enforce our policy strictly, very, very strictly, but I also think we need to lean into our social workers and our counselors on these issues, because we know that if a child is continuously coming to school and they are bullying or they are fighting, there's obviously something going on with this student. That is not the sign of a healthy individual, a mentally healthy individual. So we have all of these SEED coaches and counselors and social workers in our school. So I think it is important that we have mandatory sessions with them if we are seeing this kind of behavior, because unless we address that issue, we are going to constantly see the fighting and the bullying in the school. So I think strict policy that is strictly enforced, but also I think we really need to focus on the mental health component here.
Mr. Daugherty, addressing and ending fighting in schools.
Same question?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, that's a sad reality that's happening, and I hate to hear that. As a parent, you know, violence has a significant impact long-term on a kid's psyche and well-being. At the end of the day, the goal is always to create environments that are safe. And as a core piece to my platform and priority, we've got to be building schools that are safe. The reality is that's not always the case, and that's unfortunate, and it's something that obviously needs to be addressed. I think as far as the purview responsibility of the school board goes, is we've got to ensure that the principals that are in those buildings, that are running those buildings and those classrooms, those schools, are in tune to it, and that they are adhering to the code of conduct policy, and that they are not tolerating or accepting any type of fighting. I hate to hear that. I mean, it breaks my heart. Again, as a parent, we've got to ensure that the people on the front lines are being held to the code of conduct, and that they are creating environments that are safe for our kids.
And we're, again, running short on time, so I'm going to make this our last question before we get to closing statements. Ripped from the headlines today, perhaps a little controversial. Mr. Daugherty, the question is, would you support legislation similar to the state of Louisiana bill that would place the 10 Commandments in the classroom? Why or why not?
Yeah, so as a man, faith is the cornerstone to my life. It shapes the way that I love my wife. It shapes the way that I raise my kids. It shapes the way that I interact with everybody in my professional life and my social life. In my mind, when you're talking about leadership, it's about being a servant and listening to people and ensuring that you're going in humbly and that you're trying to support and put other people's needs before yourself. We have legislation in place that separates that type of legislation, but as a father, I'm always going to raise my children in the way that I feel fit, and I think that's the responsibility for each home and each family to decide. So at the end of the day, it's about being a servant, ensuring that we're listening and communicating effectively, and going in openly and honestly to support people as best we can in those type of conversations.
Ms. Bohm, would you support legislation similar to that of Louisiana?
No, I would not. We do have a federal law that separates church and state. It is there for a reason. I think that your faith is for your home and for your church. Not every one of our students is Christian. Not every one of our students they pray to different gods, they pray in different buildings, and all families look different. So I think to put a specific group of people's 10 Commandments into schools is not fair to the child that does not identify with them. I think that, of course, we need to be moral in our schools, which I realize that is a lot of what the 10 Commandments says, but it also does reference God. It is from the Bible, and I do not think that religion belongs in our schools in that way. Like I said, I believe that is for the home and that is for the church.
Ladies and gentlemen, we want to thank you all for being here. I know they want to get their faces in front of their air conditioners in their cars very quickly. Mr. Daugherty, I think you're first for our closing statements.
Yeah, I just want to thank everybody for coming tonight. Like I said, I haven't had the chance to meet everybody. I know this was time out of your day. We had to get a babysitter to support this, but I'm glad that we're here, and I'm glad that my opponent and I have made time to answer 36 questions about this role and why we feel it's important to us. At the end of the day, this is about a choice, and this is about choosing the best candidate to do the right job for our children. And what I hope that you saw is an individual who has a heart for our kids and our community, who has a skill set in the background to truly support our children, and it has a leadership capability to ensure that we are raising and maintaining the bar of excellence across Hamilton County Schools. This is a tough job, and I'm probably naive to it. I'm sure it's thankless. But at the end of the day, I am so encouraged by my decision to run. And I feel that if we work together as a community, we can continue to support our kids in the best way possible. And as your next school board member, I look forward to helping build strong families, strong communities, and strong schools. And I'm humbled to have your support going into August 1st.
Ms. Bohm, your closing statement.
Again, I want to thank the MAC and SNODA and you, Greg, for being here today and being our moderator. I just want to reiterate the fact that every time I write policy or I cast a vote or I have a conversation, I will be keeping the 45,000 students in the front of my mind that are here in Hamilton County. Our schools are about our children, and we need to make sure that they have the resources they need to be successful. The way we're going to do that is we're going to have teachers that feel supported and safe in their roles. We are going to reduce the amount of standardized testing that we are requiring of our children, reducing the stress from them and from our teachers, allowing more instructional time. And we're also going to make sure that our kids have the services that they need in a very timely manner. We have laws in place for this reason, and they're not being met. And I think it is extremely important to make sure that we are providing our students with services in a timely manner, that way they can be successful. So again, I am here for our students. Everything I do, I will put them first. And thank you guys for coming, and I look forward to meeting some of y'all when we get off the stage.
Once again, Crystal Bohm, Ben Daugherty. I think the Daughertys might high-five you on the way out as they go to relieve a babysitter, but once again, they will be out front to meet you. Your questions that did not get asked tonight will be typed up and sent to them. Do I hear a motion for adjournment? Second, in favor, I think we're out. Thank you so much for coming today. Remember to vote.